Hello, my friends, once again. Spiritism, a closer look. Luiz Lima here from Orlando, Florida. You are on Kardec Radio. So, welcome once again to our program. And as always, if you need to get in touch with us for suggestions, comments, contact in general, you can always do that through our emails. And let me give you the links here so you can get in touch with us. Here it is. So you can get in touch with us via any of these methods for suggestions, comments, even to request a topic for us to discuss here in our program. So, welcome once again. And tonight we are going to discuss the topic for tonight is degenerative diseases. Degenerative diseases. So, it's a little bit of science and a little bit of spiritism. It's right on the transition because it has to do with medicine and physical bodies. So there's a lot to talk about. So we're gonna, comprise to the minimum. So what does it mean exactly, right? Degenerative diseases. What does it mean? How do they get triggered? How do we go about it? How do they come on board? How do they start? So, is it avoidable? Yes or no? So, all these things we want to address here tonight. So, before we go into actual spiritism or the spiritist conditions surrounding this, let's talk about the physical part, the clinical medical part of it. What is it? What is what we call a degenerative disease? From the medicine, it's basically, in simple words, it's a medical condition that causes a tissue or an organ to deteriorate over time. So it's a process, it's a long process. Usually it's associated, because of that reason, with aging. So it gets worse with time. So it's not something that happens just like this, a snap of fingers. No, it's a process. It's a long thing. For some people, it's longer than for others, and some people don't have them at all. Just to situate a little bit, there are three types. This is still a clinical talk per se. There are three groups of degenerative diseases. First group, cardiovascular. Things like hypertension, coronary diseases, myocardial infarction, something like that. Those are cardiovascular. Number two, neoplastic. Those are tumors and cancers. And they're caused by abnormal cells that continue to grow and multiply and spread throughout the body. Third type, third group, nervous system related. Those are typically Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. Parkinson's is the loss of muscular control. Right? The neurons lose the ability to control the muscles. Again, it's timed. It happens over time. Alzheimer's is an impairment of the higher intellectual functions. So, and again, it happens over time. People don't wake up with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancers, nothing like this. All of these things, they are result of a process. That's the clinical, scientific, very basic information on it. We're not here to explain the clinical part, the medical part. We are here to understand what it is and bring the spiritist view on the subject. So, over to the spiritist view. If we start studying what spiritism tells us about diseases and health in general, well-being, anything in that sense, there's always an explanation for that. These things are tightly related to the behavior of the person and other things, other spiritual things that we are going to discuss here tonight. Spirit Emmanuel has a phrase that I think it summarizes well, very well, all of this. It's a short phrase, just a few words. He says, Health is the perfect harmony of the soul. Okay, so now we have to understand soul in a little bit more details than just the word, oh, yes, soul. No, no, no. Soul in Spiritism has a well defined meaning, which is not the same in other belief systems. So, what we're going to say needs to be understood under the Spiritist definition of soul. So, what is soul? Think of a spirit which has absolutely nothing to do with matter, just spirit, the intellectual part, what we call the intelligent principle. That's the spirit. The intelligent principle is going to operate, or it's going to use matter for its development. That's how the intelligent principle advances and grows morally and intellectually. So he needs to be in contact. He needs to be able to manipulate matter. And because the intelligent principle has nothing whatsoever that is made of matter, it needs to have a middleman, if you will, that allows this spirit to manipulate matter. Matter in all senses, from the very basic atoms, molecules, cells, everything. This middleman is called the perispirit. So we're not going to get too much into perispirit today because it's not really the purpose of this particular talk. We will in others in the future. So this soul then is made of two things. It's a definition that includes the intelligent principle and its perispirit. So it's not simply the intelligent principle, it includes the part that makes it able to interact with matter. So the soul, again, coming back to the phrase, health is the perfect harmony of the soul, or health is the perfect harmony of the perispirit and the spirit. If there's no harmony between these two parts, or something is out of whack, if you will, that's going to be trouble, because the perispirit transmits to the physical body everything that is at the spirit level. What it's thinking, its morality, vices, virtues, everything ends up over to this physical body in one way or another, more directly or not. But it does, the perispirit translates morality into physicality. We can go as far as saying that. And this is done through the perispirit. Again, we're not going to get too much into the perispirit, but it's composed of several subtle bodies. Subtle because they're not physical matter that we can use our five senses to identify. Okay, so subtle bodies are composed this perispirit, which is how the spirit imprints on matter. It's what he is. Physical body houses the contents of the thoughts of the spirits in the form of dense matter. So anything that the spirit is thinking ends up in the physical body, one way or another. When he goes to the physical body, if it's a good thing, if it's a good thought or good thoughts, if the spirit has good thoughts in general, the cells are going to be healthy and grow. If otherwise the thoughts are negative, especially over time, the cells are going to have negative energy, they're going to suffer, and they're going to be dysfunctional. Important word in our talk today. Dysfunctional, meaning they don't do their function properly. Things go wacko. So, for us to understand what health has to do with morality, we need to start at the very basic element of the physical body, which is the cell. So we're going to go look into one cell and see what happens. Well, so we need to look into the cell activity, what it's doing, what it does, how it survives. That's called cell activity, also called more technically cell metabolism. Well, think about a cell here. Let me bring you an image here on the corner of your screen so we can, align our thoughts, put our thoughts together. If you look at this cell in the very center in yellow, it's like a little, almost like an oval thing. That is the nucleus of the cell. Everything else is called cytoplasm. Cytoplasm. So you can see the cytoplasm has several little things in there. Those little things have a technical name. It's called organelles, because the cell has all the functions that the body has. It has to survive by breathing, by feeding, all of those. So we need the same way the body has organs to provide those functions. The cell has organelles because it's a tiny, tiny thing. So we use the name organelles. If you look at the cell here, there are several of these organelles. We are interested in the ones that are reddish type. There are three of them there. These guys are called mitochondria. Mitochondria. What is this thing doing in the cell? It has to do with cell metabolism. The cell has to eat, right? It has to eat. It has to bring food, if you will, inside to survive. So the cell brings in two things, oxygen and glucose. These things go into this mitochondrium, and there are several of them in the cells. They go through the mitochondrium, and it generates energy, two forms of energy, CO2, which is going to be later eliminated, and energy itself that are going to be used by the muscles, by the body in general. That's how we survive. That's our vital functions depend on that. So oxygen plus glucose, those are the things that the cell has to kind of bring in or eat, using simple words without being very technical. Now, one important thing is the cells have several mitochondriums, which is plural of mitochondrion is mitochondria. Okay, so cells have several mitochondria. Liver cells and lung cells have many, many, many more as compared to any other cell in the body, because the liver and the lung is where most of the heavy metabolism of the body takes place. So inside liver cells and lung cells, we have more than 400 of these mitochondria. So they are, the liver and the lung become these target for, generation of energy. However, oxygen and glucose are not the only two things that make part in the metabolism. For science, these are the two things. But we have more information, and that information comes from the spirit world through this book, Evolution in Two Worlds, that you see here on the corner of your screen. Evolution in Two Worlds. Evolution in Two Worlds, Spirit André Luiz, who wrote the book through medium Chico Xavier in Brazil, is going to tell us the following. I'm going to just read exactly instead of just saying in my own words, so there is no doubt. Okay? Through the mitochondria, which can be seen as accumulation of spiritual energy in the form of granules that ensure cellular activity. So parenthesis, let's analyze a little bit here. So mitochondria are seen in the spirit world. When they look at us as physical bodies, they see those as accumulation of spiritual energy that ensures cellular activity, metabolism. So let's go back. Through the mitochondria, the mind transmits to the body all of its happy or unhappy states. All of its happy or unhappy states, harmonizing or disturbing the cycle of cause and effects. So now, instead of simply having oxygen and glucose brought in, the mitochondria has to, before metabolizing these two things, it has to find out what is the state of mind. State of mind. We're talking about one cell, one organelle, or several, right? In one cell. It depends on the state of mind of the person, on what's going to happen to that process, cell metabolism. And it's clear on the text. It goes from unhappy states all the way to happy states and everything in between. So if the person is, let's just say, in revenge mode, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Revenge mode. I want revenge for some reason. All mitochondria in all cells will generate energy that is compatible with revenge. It takes oxygen, it takes glucose, it asks what is the state of mind. And the state of mind comes the answer. We're going to see how. The answer, the question is, what is your state of mind? The answer comes back, I want revenge. So the energy generated is going to be compatible with revenge. Who is suffering? The one I want to, my revenge against? No, myself. Just me, myself. So as of that point, and if I sustain that, it's even worse. If I'm in revenge mode and then, after 5 minutes, forget about this, is not worth it. Let's do my life. That's fine. But if we sustain that, if we are in revenge mode all the time, I'm going to start generating unstoppable amounts of negative energy compatible with revenge into all of my 70 trillion cells. Same way, if I'm in love mode, if I'm in fraternity love mode, the energy generated is going to be a good energy compatible with love, fraternity, charity, whatever it is. And my cells are going to be healthy, growing, and sustaining a good life, each one of them. So guess what? I feel good because all my 70 trillion cells feel good. So I said, the mitochondria has to kind of, quotes, right? Ask up there, what is your state of mind? And there's an answer that comes down. Yes, this is done through another element. It's called the bioforce. The bioforce, also in the book that you see here on your screen, they are units of psychosomatic forces. They act within the cytoplasm. Remember, the cell has two parts, nucleus and everything else is the cytoplasm. It acts within the cytoplasm, projecting on the cells, each one of them, and consequently on the body, the mental states that will better or worsen the situation, depending on good choices or bad choices. Wow, that's a statement. Let's go through it again. What do you think? Bioforce are these, the channel that comes up and down, if you will. And that's how the state of mind is transmitted into the cytoplasm. Where in the cytoplasm? Mitochondria. Projecting on the cells, each one of the 70 trillion cells, not this one or that one, all of them. Projecting the state of mind, the mental state, into the cell and consequently into the body. And what happens? If this mental state is good it's going to make things better because we're making good choices. If the state of mind or mental state is not good, the energy is going to make everything worse because we are making bad choices. So the body naturally, that's in the book, and it's something to really think about it. The body naturally inherits all the dispositions of the mind, all of them, all of them. The body buys what the mind sells, in simple words. That's it. So everything turns back to the mind. What is the mind? My mental state, what I'm thinking. The mental state is imprinted in every single cell. So there's another book that I want to bring an idea from this. The book you see on the screen, Thought and Life, written by Spirit Emmanuel, also through Miriam Chico Xavier in Brazil. This is what it says. It's going to study pride at a certain point. So he tells us this. Think about pride. Pride did not start today, did not start last week, did not start when I was born or when you were born. Pride started many, many, many incarnations ago, many lives ago. What happens is when pride is born, we're not going to get into this right now because it's not the purpose today. When pride is born, because we are still, going through an evolutionary process, but in the very beginning, this becomes a snowball. So life after life after life, this just grows. So pride increases from life to life. And there's a point where this is going to generate, there's a certain point in one of these lifetimes that this is going to generate one of these four things, not my words, Emmanuel's words. Number one, depression. Number two, ulceration. So that's physical ulceration. Three, emotional imbalance. And fourth, cellular dysfunction. Didn't we just say something about cellular dysfunction? Isn't that the purpose of tonight's talk? Degenerative diseases created and caused by cellular dysfunction. So now we know that certain diseases come from certain behaviors, certain patterns. This is something that studies started on this a little bit more formally, I would say maybe about 50 years ago or so. So now we know, for example, that people who have unresolved cases of hatred and resentment are prone to end up with some form of cancer. People with unresolved cases of envy will end up with certain kinds of kidney diseases, kidney problems. People with unresolved pride will generate at one point arthritis, and the list goes on and on and on. So this started as a clinical study by a group of doctors that subscribe to homeopathy. But then it became so popular and so right that it got into the public. Right here in the United States, one person who devoted a great deal of study on this was Louise Hay. Louise Hay, her story is beautiful, but we're not going to do it here, not today. She wrote a book, You Can Heal Your Life. And she, from experience, she associates moral patterns and diseases. There's an index of both side by side in the book. Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. What do we know today, clinically or scientifically? Degenerative diseases happen based on two factors, and the two factors have to happen at the same time. Factor number one, predisposing conditions. Predisposing conditions is genetics, age, but mostly genetics. And the other factor is what we call triggering factor. Triggering factor is behavior, it's vices, how I behave, my attitudes. Am I angry all the time? Am I in fraternity mode all the time? That's what triggers. Now, in order for that to be triggered, the predisposing factor has to be there. Predisposing factor is in our DNA. So you're going to say, well, I don't have anything to do with this. It's my mom and my dad. Talk to them. I am this way because of them. No. Mm-mm-mm. Me too, myself included. We have our DNA the way it is because that's what we needed for this life. So we had to plan our incarnation before incarnating in the spirit world, plan that this incarnation based on finding the proper male and the proper female protoplasms to generate a DNA that would be useful for my purpose in this life. So how much percent am I responsible for my DNA? 100%. 100%. So I'm responsible 100% of for the first factor, predisposing, and also 100% for the second factor, triggering. So we are responsible 100% of all these diseases that we create. It's not the son, it's not the dad, it's not the husband, it's not the wife, it's not the partner, it's not the co-worker. No, it's not the boss. No, it's not that. So is this avoidable? And if so, how do we go about it? Well, we know it has to do with morality. Morality imprints itself on the body. And through these mitochondria and biophores, we imprint on each cell our moral standards, where we stand in moral. There is moral up here, which is the moral of reference brought to us by Jesus, but we could be down here. We haven't made it this way yet. So if we are down here, we are a lot more susceptible to these things, these diseases and troubles. Now, we can help people that we see, and we want to help people that are undergoing degenerative diseases. Yeah, we can help. However, there's free will. And free will means they might be feeding the disease instead of trying to stop. And at times, we want to show up to help, even though they still have the free will to refuse our help. And then there's nothing you can do. Because free will is free will. When they are blinded by their own morality or lack of morality, there's nothing we can do physically. What we can do is pray. That's our only weapon. Pray. And pray hard. Pray every day. Pray all the time. Call people to pray with us for them. Group praying. That's just about what we can do. So, to wrap up, morality or level of morality might create degenerative diseases. Thank you so much for being with us once again here on Kardec Radio. Luiz Lima here again from Florida, sunny Florida, right? And we will see you next week right here, Spiritism, A Closer Look. Be well, and we'll see you next time.